Hello, just Jamie here. So recently I was asked by someone what is the difference between a red contrast paint by Citadel and a traditional old school base red. In this I'm going to be using Mephiston Red. So nowadays Mephiston Red, I suppose it's considered a traditional paint, and we got the newly released contrast paints by Citadel. So what the contrast paints are doing is kind of painting in large quantities rather than just using your paintbrush and just going on forever, just painting. And then sometimes, if we've not watered down the base paints, you can often leave stripes, which we don't want, little brush strokes. So this is why contrast paints are so good, because they act a lot like a shade, so they're very watery. And in fact, if I compare this Blood Angels Red with a shade, a normal shade, if you can see the tops of these, you'll see they're extremely watery. So they're kind of the same thing, only the contrast have got more pigment of the colour in there you choose to go for. So I've got my Horus Heresy Terminator here, and I'm going to first of all use the old school method of painting this using a base paint, which is Mephiston Red. So without watering this down, as some people out there will, when you apply base coat, some of you water it down. Depends what I'm painting personally, but sometimes I do water them and put different layers of base. Sometimes don't. So just for argument's sake, to show what the difference is, I'm going to just apply a tiny little bit of Mephiston base to the shoulder pads here, and there we go. So firstly, you can see it's bright, but just seems to take forever, just painting. And it's guaranteed, once this shoulder pad is dried, you'll see slight streaks in it. So if I just water down, if I just wash out my brush here, and for this I'm using a highlighting brush. So we now have the contrast paint, which is a Blood Angels Red, and I'm going to just apply to the other shoulder pad some of this. And you'll see it applies very watery. So like I said, we've got the colour here, and we've also got the shade. So it's going to be a bit messy, because I'm not really set up for this. But this literally looks like blood. It's a really good colour. It's very, blood colour, like literally. So if you can see this, it's going into our recesses and the corners, and it's acting like a shade as well as colour in it. So I'm quite new with contrast, but I know what they do, so I'd imagine by the looks of it, I would need to apply 2 coats of contrast for this, or possibly just the one once it's dried. So let me just show you a little bit more of this soaking into the recesses. So if I apply a bit more, if I go for this here, you'll see that just like a shade, those recesses are being covered. So if we go back to the Mephiston base here, you'll see it's definitely not as vibrant. And Mephiston base, Mephiston Red, to my knowledge, is what most Blood Angels painters use as the base. I've always used it. So let me just show you with a bit more light the differences, in case this is dark. So there we go. Like I said, acts as a shade. If you take a look here, you'll see that there's very darker colours going into the recesses. So this then kind of takes away the need of using a shade. So you're essentially paying a bit more for a contrast, but you're getting 2 in 1, as it were. So you're getting a shade plus almost like a base coat. So I'm quite new to these contrasts, but one of the contrast paints I definitely recommend if you're into painting wooden things like bows, that type of thing, or gun parts, is Wildwood, and it's one of my favourites, and it's absolutely superb, the Wildwood contrast. So let me just give you a little show of how good this looks. So the Wildwood contrast, definitely there's a lot of use for Wildwood with the Age of Sigmar, more wooden things rather than 30k or 40k. So if you can see what I'm doing here, you can see the Wildwood acts a lot like a real wood. So once it's dried in, you can see that wood effect coming. And of course, for a wood effect, what I would normally do using this Wildwood contrast paint is then highlight it or even brush it down using some sort of stone, like a white stone dry brush, and it really brings out that amazing effect. So just to say what I was saying about the contrast Wildwood, if you check this out, this is Slaanesh from Age of Sigmar. I did quite some time ago. And what I was saying about using the dry brush strokes is, if you take a look at these highlights, it gives it that real oak look effect. I mean, this one isn't perfect, like I said, I did this one some time back, but I used the contrast paint in this to go into the recesses, and in person it looks amazing. I hope this comes out well on YouTube. But yeah, that's the effectiveness of contrast paints, is that the pigment is better, I believe, than the traditional base paints by Citadel. And if I just put that one aside a minute and go back to this Terminator, so on the right shoulder pad there, and that's a bit my fingerprint, you will see in the light there, it's very patchy. If we now go round to the other sides, it's not patchy at all. It's just a bit darker, a bit lighter in places, but it's definitely not patchy. So we no longer have that brush stroke, bristle stroke annoyance, which is why people choose to water down their base coats. So anyway, I hope this helps somebody. And when I heard about the contrast paints a little while back, I was very reluctant. I thought it was really sort of lazy, but if you got a squad of say 30 or 40 say Space Marines to do Blood Angels, then using contrast paints to do the majority of their armor, each one of your Marines' armor, it's definitely a time saver. So yeah, I hope someone learnt something from this, and let me know what you think about contrast paints and base paints in the comments. Cheers.